Good morning, students. How are you? Am I audible? Good morning, Tanya. Very nice. Am I audible to you? Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah? Yes, very nice. So let's start today's session. Today's very interesting topic. Today we are going to learn about the probability. Today's topic is probability. So I'm sure you people have used some kind of probability before. So it's kind of an introduction. If you already know, it will be like revisiting it. If you don't know, you have to pay more attention because it may be something new for you. So let us start today's session. So let's start with the counting principle. What is a counting principle? It is about counting and getting some information, like how can we say, like if you have how the definition says, if you have m ways of doing activity 1, n ways of doing activity 2, then how many ways you can do both the activities? You need m times n, so m multiplied by n. So for example, if you have so let us see the example so that you understand. For example, let us say Martin has 2 shirts and 3 pants. Then he has a dash, means we have to fill the blank. It's how many possible options does he have? And then we have another question. You have a deck of 52 cards, a die with 6 sides, and a coin with 2 sides. If you are asked to select one card from the deck, one side of a die, and one side of a coin, then how many options do you have? So you have 52 choices on the first side, first choice, like in the deck of card, and you have 6 options from the die, and you have 2 from the last one. So how many you have in total? On third one, let us say John received a new credit card. The card came with a default PIN, the personal identification number, the PIN, which is 4-digit number. So usually when you receive a credit card, you will receive a PIN number, and the bank manager advises us to change it. So the bank manager advised him to change the PIN as early as possible. How many options does John has for the new PIN? Okay, so let us see one after another. So for example, it's very easy. Martin has 2 times 3. There are 6 possible options for his outfit. And if you are asked to remove one card from the deck and one of the sides of coin, so what we have? 52 times 6 times 2. So that's how do we get it? It's from the counting principle. Okay. So how many pins are possible? We know each digit can be ranging from 0 to 9, which are 10 digits. So we have 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. We have 4. We have to multiply 10 4 times, or we can say 10 to the power of 4. Why? Because the pin is 4-digit number. So how many options does he have? He already have one default. So all he's having is 10,000 minus 1, which is 9,999 options he has now to select the new pin number. Okay. Now let's understand what is permutation. This is very interesting. A permutation is if you have n elements and you are asked to select another n. So the n, the lowercase letter n indicates how many you want to select, and the uppercase n tells us how many objects are available, how many elements are available. And every time you select element, you have to record its order. For example, if I give you like some options and I ask you to select, and every time you select, you have to tell, first I'm selecting this one, the second I'm selecting is this one. So you have to you have to select in a specific order. When you select in a specific order, then how many possible ways you can select is we call permutations, and we represent that using this n, capital N, P, the lowercase n, or P with the above superindex with the total elements and the subindex of the possible you have to select the elements, the number of elements you want to select. And the formula is given by n factorial divided by uppercase n minus lowercase n factorial. So what is a factorial? Factorial is multiplying all the numbers until the integer we have. Here we are talking about integers. We are not talking about any other real numbers or other numbers. We are only talking about the integer numbers. That too, we are talking only positive numbers. So it is very easy for us to understand because it starts from 1 multiplied until n. So for example, if you say n maybe like let us say it is 5. So what is 5 factorial? It will be 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. And in factorial, we should remember we also have 0 factorial, and the 0 factorial is 1. So it's by definition, we are defining that 0 factorial is 1, and whatever factorial we want, we just compute from that. Okay, let us see an example. So let us say you are organizing a prestigious 4-day conference, and every day in the conference you have to select, you want the conference to start with a keynote speaker. So you want the conference to be started with someone very important person to be talking at the beginning, so that the conference becomes more prestigious, right? Okay. Your team identified 10 possible such candidates. So you identified 10 candidates. So now question is, how many options do you have? So the question says you have 10 possible candidates who can give who can be the keynote speakers, and you have 4 days conference. So you can't select all 10 of them. So you can select only 4 of them. And every time you select, you have to assign a day. So this person is going first day, the other person is going the second day. So you have to select them, and also in an orderly fashion. So what we are doing here is a permutation problem. So how many options do you have? So how many options do we have? Let's go to the solution and see. So the possible number of options are, we know the formula, it is uppercase n factorial divided by n uppercase n minus lowercase n factorial. So which is equals to 10 factorial divided by 6 factorial. So how do we write 10 factorial? 1 times 2 times 3 times until 10. And 6 factorial, we write 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6. So if we see the denominator, we can eliminate some of the numerator terms. So what we are having is 7 times 8 times 9 times 10, which is equals to 5040. So you have 5040 options to select from, right? Okay. So, so until here, any doubts? If you have any doubts, please raise your hands. You can raise your hands at any moment you have doubt. You can just raise your hands and we'll try to address it. Okay. So now let's go to the next slide, which is called combinations. Combinations is very similar to the permutations, but here the order at which you are selecting is not important. So you can select it any random order, and you can write them as a group. You don't have to tell I selected first this one. You don't have to say that. So you can select it any order. So how do we represent it? This representation is very similar. Instead of P, we use C here. P for permutations, C for combinations. And here, for example, we say the uppercase n, C, the lowercase n, which is equals to, we can write as C with a superindex of capital N and a subindex of lowercase n, which is equals to, also we have another representation in this parenthesis form. If you write this parenthesis with it kind of looks like a vector, but it's not a vector. It is parenthesis which represents the combinations. The top one says the total number of available options, and the the second one says the lowercase n, which is how many options you are selecting, how many elements you are selecting. And how do we do is, you see the formula is very similar. N factorial divided by n. I'm just talking about this part with the parenthesis. If you see n factorial divided by uppercase n minus lowercase n factorial, which is equals to the permutation, but we are also dividing with another lowercase n factorial. Why are we doing this is, if we are not selecting in an order, we are having less options, because we have less count. We have the same kind of options, but we have less count. We don't have to count. For example, you selected A, B, C. In permutations, you can write this ABC, BCA, CAB in many different forms, right? So if you are not accounting all the different ways of writing, what you are doing is you are dividing it. So all these are getting little lesser. So we are doing it with n factorial. So we divide the whole permutations divided by n factorial. So if you already have permutations and you just want the combinations, so what you have to do is you have to divide with the n factorial and you will get the result. Okay. Let us see an example. Okay. So let us say you are a portfolio manager in a small hedge fund, and you decided to create a new fund that will attract risk-taking investors. The fund will include 5 stocks of fast-growing companies that offer growth potential. So your team of analysts identified 20 companies that suit the profile you wanted, right? So how many possible combinations are there for your fund? So what we are saying is, we have identified 20 companies to invest, but you can only invest in 5. So you have to select 5 among those 20 companies. So how many options do you have? That's the question. So how do we do? It's a combination problem. It doesn't matter which company you write on the first, because you are going to invest in all 5 of them. So we don't have an order. So how do we do? The solution is, we are using this representation of parentheses. Using parentheses, we are saying we have 20 elements and we want to select 5 among them. So how do we do? 20 factorial divided by 5 factorial times 20 minus 5 factorial, which is 20 factorial divided by 5 factorial times 15 factorial. So if you remember already, 20 factorial divided by 15 factorial, which is similar to permutations, which we can write 16 times 17 times 18 times 19 times 20. So right, and then we are dividing by 5 factorial, which is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. But here we have to understand something. Every time we have this, so if you want to verify if it is correct or wrong, always the solution is an integer. So for some reason, if you did any mistake in computation and all, and if you receive a result like, let us say you received 15,525.6, so it is not possible. The answer is always an integer. Even if you see the numbers are different, so it will be cancelled out such a way that you always get an integer. That's why I showed here by cancelling the numbers. For example, the 16 we didn't cancel, the 17 we didn't cancel, the 18 reduced to 3 means I cancel with 6. What is the 6? 2 times 3 is 6. So I reduced these 2 terms. The first 3 terms are reduced or eliminating, the 18 to 3. And the 19 we are writing as such, and the 20 is 4 times 5. So I'm removing completely. So we are left out with this. And this happens every time. Every time the denominator cancels the numerator, and we will be left out with some integers multiplying with each other, and it means the result is also an integer. In this case, it is 15,504, right? Okay. Now let's go to the part
Professor, I didn't get this
yes,
example.
please.
Could you please repeat it?
Okay.
I'm not sure why you're canceling everything. I mean, I didn't understand the reason you're doing so.
You didn't understand the reason why am I canceling it?
Yeah, because 20 factorial is 1 multiplied by 2 and so on until 20. And 15 factorial as well. And why are you just considering 1 to 5 and 16 to 20?
Okay, yeah. So because the 15 factorial is multiplication from 1 to 15, right? 1 times, 2 times, 3 times until 15. And the 20 factorial is also 1 times, 2 times until 20. So this 15 factorial, once you divide, so you divide all first 15 terms. So I'm left out with the, until 15 it is cancelled with the denominator. So I have 16 to 20 in the numerator. In the numerator, it should be from 1 to 20. In the denominator, it is 1 to 5 and also from 1 to 15. But the 1 to 15 and the first 1 to 15 of this 20 factorial are cancelled out completely. Am I clear now?
Yeah, sort of. Thank you.
Okay, now let me repeat it so that we have clear. So until here it is understood, right? Like 20 factorial divided by 5 factorial times 15 factorial, right?
Yes.
Okay, so 20 factorial, how do we write it? We write 1 times 2 times 3 times until 20, right?
So it's just for saving space.
Yeah, it's kind of yeah, and yeah, there are two ways. One is for saving space, and another is to highlight that this is also equal to the permutations, because in the permutations problem, if you see, let me show you the previous example once. Here in the permutations, if you see this, we have 1 to 10, 1 times 2 times 3 times until 10, divided by 1 times 2 times 3 times until 6. So once we cancel, we can see it is 7 times 8 times 9 times 10, which is here, right? So I just wanted to highlight that in this example also it's happening similar. I mean, we are having this numerator part is the permutation, and then we are dividing with the 5 factorial. I wanted to highlight this part.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, you're welcome. Okay, any other doubts, please ask me. Okay, so let's go to the next topic, the probability. So let me ask a question to see how many of you already know what is probability. Let me ask a short question. Let us see how many of you are familiar. So I see majority of you already know what is probability. Okay, 2 of us doesn't know, 3 of us doesn't know. Okay. Okay, so 3 of us doesn't know what is probability. So we have to pay more attention because it's a new topic and it's very interesting, and it is very useful in the future. In the future topics which we are going to cover. Okay, so in probability, what type of questions we ask is, for example, if I say, how likely is going to rain on a random day? So if you select any random day, how much, or is it going to rain or not? So we say it's a kind of probability. So we say it is probable that it will rain like with 10%, 20%, or we can say, or if we ask a question like how likely is it to rain if it is cloudy day? So then the answer will change, like it may be like 80% or 90%, right? So how do we represent a probability? Do we represent P of A? A is an event. So what is P? P of is kind of a function which says what is the probability of happening A. So when you see P of A, it means what is probability of happening A. Okay, so what is the value? The value is between 0 to 1. So we are saying the percentage, how likely we say 80%, but in probability we don't use percentage. We use, for example, if you want to say 80%, in probability we say 0.8. So the values are always between 0 and 1. 0 means there is very less chance, or we can say 0 chance, and 1 is very probable. It's like almost certain that it's going to rain. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So let's understand some terminology. This is very important for us to use this terminology because sometimes we get confused. So it's better to know the terminology. So what is an experiment? Experiment is an operation which we do with a definite results. So if we perform something and we know we have some definite well-defined results. For example is like the die, right? If you throw a die and if you know you definitely get one of the 6 results. So that's we call it an experiment. And what is a random experiment? And the random experiment is you already know what is the result you are getting, but you don't know which result you are getting. For example, it's again the same, the die experiment. So if you throw a die, you know you are getting one of the 6 faces, but you don't know which face you are getting. So we call it a random experiment. Okay. And then what is sample space? Sample space is all the possible results that you can get from an experiment. For example, again, using the same example of the die, if you throw a die, and what is the sample space is we have 6 different faces. So the sample face is, if each face is having a dot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots. So sample space will be 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, 4 dots, 5 dots, 6 dots. That's the sample space. And what is the outcome? So outcome is the result which we receive. So if we do experiment and we get something, what we are saying is the face, which face is coming, right? That in terms of mathematics, we say outcome. What is the outcome of the experiment? The outcome of the experiment is, let us say for an example, it is 4. So we see the 4 dots face on the top. So we say, okay, that's the outcome is 4. Okay. And then let us see what is an event. An event is some selection of certain outcomes. We call it an event. For example, let us say in a die again, the odd numbers, the event will be like the possibility of seeing odd number. The odd number is the event. So it is having more than one or more than one of the outcomes are grouped together. So one outcome is 4, one outcome is 3. But if you group some outcomes, for example, when you say odd numbers, so we are grouping 1, 3, and 5. So all these three elements or 3 outcomes are grouped together and we call it an event. So the probability can be applied to the events. So what is the probability of getting an odd number? What is the probability of getting an even number? So we can apply probability to the events. And what is a trial? Trial is performing a random experiment. Means, so if you already know what is a random experiment, the act of doing it is called a trial. So if you are performing random experiment, we say it is a trial, right? Okay. So now let us see a representation of sample space. So how do we represent the sample space? So we have 3 mostly used one. One is listing out all the possible outcomes. So you can write all the possible outcomes. Another one is using the tree diagram, or we can use the Venn diagrams. someone who is already familiar with set theory in mathematics, so they know already how the Venn diagram works, and it's very useful in counting and other stuff. So let's use all three of them, and let's get some information. And I personally prefer the tree diagram. It is more informative. It gives more information to me. But let us see how it works. So let us see example of two dice thrown at the same time. So if you throw two dice, what are the possible outcomes? Here are all the listed one in the yellow color, right? So the die 1 and the die 2 has 6 faces. So first possibility is 1, 1, means the first die is 1 and the second die is also 1. Like that, we have listed all the possible outcomes. This is a complete sample space. So you can see all the possible answers here. And again, if you see another, this is another example. Let us say if they have, we are talking about a restaurant. If we have a menu with 3 starters, a soup, prawn, cocktail, and bruschetta, and there are 3 main course, lamb, egg, and chicken. So what are the possible combinations? So what people can eat is select one from the starters, one from the main course, right? So here we have listed all the possibles. So we already know it is 3 times 3 from the counting problem, but here we are listing them all together. L, S, L for lamb, S for soup, and here are the all other possible ways. Okay, and now let us see the Venn diagram, how Venn diagram are shown. Okay, so the problem says you have removed all the diamond from the deck. So you have all the diamond cards. So all the diamond cards means you have only one color ones. So we know it starts from A, 2, 3, 4 until 10, and then J, Q, and K. Those are the total cards we have. So in that, the question is the P is every diamond is chosen. So P is every even diamond is chosen. The even numbers are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And if we consider J, Q, K in orderly fashion, like J is 11, Q is 12, and K is 13. So we can include Q is also part of the even numbers. And then we say R is a royal. Royal are the J, Q, and the K. So if we see this map, it says S represents the sample space. It's a complete the diamond cards, all the diamond cards available in a deck, which is represented by the S. And the P is circled such a way that it encloses all the even ones. And R is another, we put a circle. It should not be, it can be a circle, but it don't have to be exact circle. It can be any shape. All we are doing is collecting these objects into one closed group. So this R is collecting the elements J, Q, K, because these three are the royals. So this is the Venn diagram representation. So we see another example of this Venn diagram. It says if we are rolling the 2 dice again, the same like doing rolling 2 dice again, and we have 2 events. The first event says sum of dice should be equals to 8. So if you add them, they should come as 8. That is A. And the another one is at least one of the dice should show 2. So we have 2 events, event A and event B. So event A is the sum should be 8. So if you organize all this in a sample space in such a way that we can have a collection without overlapping with others. So we are choosing in this fashion. So if you see, the A is like this diagonal, which is all the dice. If you add them, you can add them up to 8. So 6 plus 2, 5 plus 3, 4 plus 4, 3 plus 5, and 2 plus 6. So all these add up to 8. And then we have another set of sample space, or another subset of sample space, where we have at least one of them is showing phase of 2. So if you see 1 2, 2 1, 2 2, 2 3, 2 2 4, so on, right? So we have all this. This is a way of showing them. Okay. Now let us go and see the tree diagram. Tree diagram is something more interesting. So how do we say is, if we have, first we have this one we are talking about is a coin flipping at event, a trail in an experiment of coin flipping. The possible outcomes is head or a tail. So what is the possibility of head? It is 50%. Another 50% is for tail, but in probability we say 0.5 and 0.5, right? So the tree starts with a start point, and it moves into 2 branches. The one branch is head, another branch is tail. So if we have more, so we can put more. For example, if it is a die, we will have 6 branches. But in this case, we have 2 branches, and each branch shows one different outcomes. Here, one outcome is head, another outcome is tail. Okay. So what's the probability? We write the probability here as shown here. The probability is 0.5 for the heads and 0.5 for the tails. Okay. So now let us see the same example of the two coins flipped. So for one coin flipped, we saw this. For 2 coins flipped, we have this. The tree has grown a little longer, a little bigger. So how do we have? The first we have seen the heads and tails. And once you flipped one coin, and if you flip another coin, what happens? Again, you have 50% chance of getting head and another 50% chance of getting tail. So if you are having in the first flip, if you got a tail, and if you flip again you have 50% of getting head and 50% of getting tail. So this is the complete T diagram. If you are flipping coins one after another, 2 coins you are flipping one after another. So what we say, if you want to see what is the probability of getting head, both the times head, what you have to do is you have to multiply the branch you are moving. For example, you start with this, the start point. You have to move, and as you move, you have to multiply all the gains. We can say the gains or the probability on that branch. For example, I want to see head, both should be head. So I'm moving like this as highlighted. So when I go to the first head, I already have 0.5. When I go to another head, I got another 0.5. I have to multiply both of them, and that gives 0.25. So 0.25 is the probability of me getting 2 heads when I flip 2 times consecutively, one after another. So in that way, here we are using a fair coin, so the probability is 50-50 all the times. So what we have is 0.25, and we have 0.25 for head and head tail, tail head, and tail tail as well. So once we add all the probabilities, it should always add up to 1, because we are accounting all the possible outcomes. So we already know a well-defined experiment or an experiment always have a outcome, and outcome is, we have listed all the outcomes. So the sum of all these outcomes, probability of all the sum of all these outcomes should be 1. So in this case, at any stage, if you add, for example, even at the first stage, if we add 0.5 plus 0.5 should be 1. If you go to the second stage, we have to multiply this 0.5 with the previous one, and you get 0.25. In this case, all are 0.25s. If we add all these 4, we get 1. And it should happen at any branch. If you add all this, all the probability of all the outcomes, you should get equals to 1. That's we have to make sure it is 1. Okay, let us see with an example. Okay. In this case, so let us see what is the example. You are off to a soccer and love being the goalkeeper. But that depends who is the coach today. So it depends. You want to become a goalkeeper, but it depends on the coach. So if the coach is Sam, the probability of being goalkeeper is 50%, so 0.5. But if coach is Alex, the probability is 0.3, or we can say 30%, right? So Sam is coach more often, about 6 out of 10 games. So most of the time Sam is the coach. So with a what percentage, like 60% of the time, he is the coach. So the question is, so how probable is that you are going to be the goalkeeper today? So here we constructed the tree diagram. So we start with the starting point. So we know we have two possible options. One is the coach can be Sam or Alex. What is the probability of Sam being the coach? 0.6, and Alex is 0.4. Okay. If we add these two, it should be 1. We have to make sure the sum is 1. Okay, it is 1, so it is right. So we go to the next stage. So if Sam is the coach, so what is the probability that he can make you the goalkeeper? Is 50%. Yes is for goalkeeper, no is for not a goalkeeper. So 50-50 when Sam is the coach. When Alex is the coach, we have 30% for being a goalkeeper and 70% for not being a goalkeeper. And if we add these all, we should get a 1. So how do we add? Not just these numbers, we have to multiply with the previous one. So if we add here, 0.6 times 0.5 is 0.3, 0.6 times 0.5 is 0.3, 0.4 times 0.3 is 0.12, 0.4 times 0.7 is 0.28. So if we add all these probabilities, it should come 1. It is to verify that we are doing the problem correctly. So 0.3 plus 0.3 is 0.6, 0.12 plus 0.28 is 0.4. So it is 1, so it is correct. So now let us see how we can solve this. Oh, sorry. So what is the answer? Can someone tell me what is the answer for you being the goalkeeper in this case? What is the probability of you be the goalkeeper? So let me ask in the what is okay, let us see if we can solve this. Please tell me if you are finding difficulty. So let me explain again so that we understand. The tree says it is 60% chance for Sam and 40% chance for Alex. When Sam is the coach, you have 50% chance of being goalkeeper, which says yes. When it says no, it means you are not the goalkeeper. When it says yes, you are the goalkeeper. In Alex, when it is Alex time, it is 30% chance, so we get S. So what is the probability is, here we see when Sam is the coach and it is S means you are the goalkeeper is 0.6 times 0.5, which is 0.3. So what is this 0.3 represents? It represents that Sam is the coach and you are the goalkeeper. And 0.3 represents the second 0.3 represents Sam is the coach, but you are not the goalkeeper. Okay. And now the next branch of the Alex. In Alex branch, you have one yes and one no. What does yes means? It means that you are the goalkeeper when the Alex is the coach. So it is the chances is 0.12. And 0.28 is the probability that you are not the goalkeeper when Alex is the coach. So my question is, we don't want to know who is the coach. All we want to know is, are you going to be the goalkeeper or not? And what is the probability? So how can we do that? So how we do is, we want to know yes, but the yes is 0.3 and also 0.13. So if you add 0.3 and 0.13, that's a total probability that you can be the coach. Oh, sorry, I mean you can be the goalkeeper. It doesn't matter who is the coach. So you will be the goalkeeper when it is 0.3 when it is Sam and 0.12 when it is Alex. But the sum of these two is the total probability, and which is 0.42. So the answer is 0.42. Right? So 0.42 represents shows the probability of you being the goalkeeper. Okay, now let us see an example of relative frequency. We saw this problem in the previous class, how we can create group, how we can group the data and use the relative frequency. Here let us see. In the following table, displays the cause of death in a workplace in US. If we select death from the population, what is the probability that death was from fall? What is the probability that death was from a transport accident? So from this table, we should be able to extract this information. So how we can do is, we have total accidents. Total accidents are adding all the numbers on the right side, all the frequencies we can say. And then we can divide, for example, the question is asking for death from the fall. So it is 645 divided by the total number, right? So we can do that. Or we can just prepare the frequency or relative frequency. How do we do that? You already know the table. So let's make the relative frequency. So we have here the cause, here the total number of deaths for each cause. And then we create a relative frequency, and we know sum of all the relative frequency should come 1, and each relative frequency represents the probability. For example, the question is, what's the probability of a death by fall, which is 0.1451. We just take that number, and in percentage, what you can say, it is 14.51% of the people die from fall. Okay, so what's the probability of death by transportation? So we go to the transportation class and we see it is 0.3836 in terms of probability. In terms of percentage, you can say 38.36% of people die because of the transportation accidents, right? Okay, now let us see the complement. What is complement is, if you have an event A and its complement is all the outcomes which are not A. So if you see the Venn diagram, we are collecting some objects. Let us say if you're collecting some objects. So if you say A, if you want to get the complement of that, so what you are doing is you have to select all the elements which are out of your grouping section. So you are just like you are selecting all the non-possible, I mean, all the elements that you are not selecting, or in this case, we say the outcomes, right? So let me give an example. If I say all the odd numbers you are selecting and you are putting them that event as A is an event which is all the even numbers when the die is rolled. So what is the complement of that is A complement. We write in this form A with a bar on top of it, and we say it is all the possible outcomes which are not even. In this case, we have only one option, which is odd. So in a sample space, if you say there is a sample space, and if you collect some objects by circling them in like a Venn diagram, so what you have to do is you have to select all the elements which are not in that circle. It's just exactly opposite of it. Okay. So let us see with an example. So like how we are doing now. So if there is a sample space of rolling dice experiment, and we know the outcomes are 1, 2, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if we select an event, the event is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what is probability of A bar? A bar is complement of A. Complement of A, we know what is complement of A. Complement of A is something which is not A. Or we should say everything which is not A. Everything is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we remove everything from, we remove A from everything. So we are left out with 5 and 6. So let us see what it shows. It shows if A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then A bar is 5 and 6. So what is probability of A? 4 divided by 6, because you have 4, so we are selecting 4, and by 6, there are possible 4 outcomes by 6. But A complement is left out with 2, 2 divided by 6. And we always know the PA and PA bar are probability of occurring event A and probability of occurring A complement. The sum of these two is always 1, because we know 1 is the total probability. So if it happens A or it doesn't happen. So if we add both, it should be 1. So it accounts for all the possible outcomes, or we say it fills the complete sample space. Okay, let us see in the previous example. The previous example is not the one of the relative frequency example. In the relative frequency example, we saw a table in that we calculated that the probability of dying from a fall is 0.1415. So the question is, what is the probability of dying from all other causes? So you have a big sample space. There are people dying from different causes. So one of them is by fall. So I say we already know because of the fall there are 14.51% of people are dying. So my question is, what is the cause of all other deaths? Or not the cause, I mean, what is the percentage of people dying from all other causes? So it's very simple. Why? Because we already know P of F plus P of F complement is equals to 1. So we want P of F complement, which is equals to 1 minus P of F, or we can say 1 minus 0.1415, which is 0.8549. So there are 85.49% of people dying from all the other causes, which is not from fall. Okay. So now let us talk a little about union. So now we are entering from little into the let us say structured way of thinking the probability. Until now we did elemental basis. Now we want to join two events and see how it behaves, right? So here we should be paying more attention. So at any instant you have doubt, please raise your hand. Let us resolve it. Okay. An outcome is in the event A union B if the outcome is in A or in B or in both of A and B. So what does it mean? If I say I'm creating a new event A union B, means it has all the outcomes from event A and also all the outcomes from event B. Here we see an example. A is a set of outcomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and B is set of outcomes 4, 5, 6. So what is A union B? So we have to write all the events from both the sets or both the events. I mean, we have to write all the outcomes from both the events. So here 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you see 4 and 5, it is available in both the events, event A and also event B. Even if we have both, we are not adding 2 times. So because once you add 4, it's added. So you say 4 and 5. So that's how it is represented. We don't add multiple times. We add only once. One outcome only once it is present. It is a set. Okay. And now let us see what is intersection. Intersection is we write only with we write elements which are available in both the events. So if we say we have 2 events A and B, A is having certain outcomes, B is collection of certain outcomes. So if I ask what is A intersection B, what we are going to write is all the outcomes which are available in the event A, and also they should be available in the event B. For example, in this case, we see A is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and B is 4, 5, 6. So I want to write A intersection B. So this event is should have the outcomes from both the events. So what are the outcomes? 4 and 5 from the first, and 4 and 5 from the second are the common. So we write just 4 and 5 here. This intersection, A intersection B, right? Okay. Now let us see the addition law of probability. So what does addition law of probability says is the probability of A union B is equals to probability of A plus probability of B minus probability of A intersection B. It is very obvious because when you add probability of A and probability of B, we add, if you see in the terms of relative frequency, we are adding both the probabilities. But once you see the element wise, for example, let me show you the elements here. If you add the probability of this and probability of this, so we are adding the probability of 4, 5 2 times, see here and here. So what we have to do is we have to remove this 4 and 5. So what is 4 and 5? We already know 4 and 5 is the intersection part. So what we are doing here is probability of A union B is probability of A plus probability of B, but we are removing one of the intersection part because we are adding 2 times. So this is the probability of A union B. We call it addition law of probability. Okay, let us see an example. Imagine we are studying complaints from services provided. Out of 100 services, we found out that 10 out of 100 had complaints regarding delay in services. 15 out of 100 are complaints regarding quality of services. 5 out of 100 are complaints regarding delays and quality of services. Based on this, we decided to assign warnings to employees providing services that delay or with low quality. What is the probability that we assign a warning to one of our employees? So it says we are having complaints, and so let us see what is the first complaint. We have 10 out of 100 means 0.1 is a probability of complaints regarding what? Regarding the delays. Then we call it the event A. And the event A says the probability of having a complaint because of the delays is 0.1. In the B, we are saying it's because of the bad quality. So how many complaints are we receiving? 15. 15 out of 100 complaints are because of the bad quality. So what is the probability that you received a complaint that is a bad quality, which is 0.15. So this is a probability. And then we have another information which says there are 5 complaints. There are 5 people complaining both delay and the quality. So A intersection B, we say if A is delays, B is bad quality, then A intersection B is delays and bad quality. So probability of having a complaint with both A and B, we represent like this: probability of A intersection B, which is equals to 0.05, which is 5 divided by 100, right? Okay. So the question is, what is the probability of A union B? Means what is the probability of getting a complaint because of delay or because of bad quality? So how do we do that? Using the law of addition. So P, probability of A union B, is equals to probability of A plus probability of B minus probability of A intersection B. So we say 0.1 plus 0.15 minus 0.05, which is 0.2. So which is 20% of the time we have a complaint which is because of delay or because of bad quality, right? Okay. So let's understand what is mutually exclusive events. So before I step into this, I want to tell you something regarding the probability. Usually in mathematics, we apply logic and we apply some kind of what we say understanding. We take some physical examples and we try to solve them, and we get to the result, right? And it is very useful all the times. No matter what type of mathematics we do, it's always useful. But when we go to the probability, there is very big chance that we are biased to something. So we start believing something so strongly that we start questioning the results. So what I recommend is, first follow the steps mathematically, then take your time. So when, let us say for example, you have to get some solution and you have less time, do not put your reasoning into the problem, because it may give wrong answer because you are biased most of the times. So what I recommend is, take a lot of time to solve the probability problems. The problems with probability needs your time. So you sit when you are very calm and you have a lot of time, you sit and you solve the problem slowly. And then you understand what's happening at each step. So if you're in hurry, you do something, it makes, sometimes the results will be like something very contradicting to your belief. So you may not be appreciating the result, right? So I say the mathematics is the correct one. What you are thinking is mostly wrong. So once you have a result, so if you want to really understand, you have to give time. So you have to sit at each step, you have to understand. Only then at the result it makes some sense. Or else you will be like finishing all the problem and you say, oh, I don't think it is right, and you will be taking a bad decision. So to take a good decision, you need to follow the mathematics. If you have time, you follow step by step and try to do a better analysis, good analysis. Okay, so I say this because it happened to me many times, and it may happen to a lot of other people. So I don't want it to happen to any one of my students. So use this, that mathematics is correct. What you are thinking needs more time and more analysis. Okay. Let us say mutually exclusive events. What is mutually exclusive events? So if two events are happening in are completely we say independent, they don't have any common terms together, they don't have any common outcomes, so we call them mutually exclusive events. So for one of the example is when you throw a die, the even number and odd numbers are mutually exclusive. So if you say one event is all the even numbers and another event is all the odd numbers, so these two events are mutually exclusive. So if one happens, the other one doesn't happen. So in the Venn diagram, if you draw this, so you can see you draw two circles and they don't touch anywhere. Or we can say in mathematically, the intersection doesn't have any elements. So the probability of intersection of A intersection B is 0. So the addition law we saw already will become, the union will become a pure sum of probability of A plus probability of B. There is no intersection, so we don't have to subtract anything. Okay. Now let us understand the conditional probability. The conditional probability is something you say, so what is the probability of A when B is already happened? For example, the question we asked, what is the probability it's going to rain if it is already cloudy? So you say, what is the probability, how likely is going to rain when it is cloudy? So being a cloudy is something you are giving already. You say it's already cloudy. So now tell me, is it going to rain or not? So what is the probability of rain? So when you want to answer this question, so use this formula, probability of A intersection B divided by probability of B. Let us see with an example. What is the probability of obtaining 2 as outcome on a die roll if we know that the outcome is an even number? So let us say you're like in this example, as the example say, there is a die, you throw a die, and there is a result. You didn't see the result, but someone said, okay, the result is an even number. So what is the probability that the answer is, or the outcome is 2? So how do we do is through mathematical, this whole sample space is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Outcome is 2, which is, oh, I did a mistake. It is just 2, right? A is 2, not 1, 2. Sorry. Here it is just 2. The outcome is 2 is A is equals to 2. I made a mistake here. Please note this is just 2 because that's what we want to know. Outcome is 2. And the outcome is even. When outcome is even, we know it is 2, 4, and 6. So what's the probability of B? So we know 3 divided by 6. 3 divided by 6, which is 0.5. So what is A intersection B, which is 2? Oh, sorry, I didn't read the question. The probability of obtaining 1 or 2, right? Okay, yeah, it's correct. It's 1 or 2. I didn't pay attention to the question properly. The question says probability of obtaining 1 or 2. So it's already even. So we can say we can ignore the part 1. But anyway, so let us. So what we are interested is A intersection B, which is 2. So what is the probability of A intersection B, which is 1 divided by 6. So what's the probability of A when B is given is using the formula. The formula says P probability of A intersection B divided by probability of B, which is 1 divided by 6 divided by 1/2, which is 0.5, and the answer is 1 divided by 3. So there are 1/3 chances that the answer is, or the outcome is 2. So I was concentrating on 2 because 1 and 2 doesn't make sense when you already say the outcome is an even number. But anyway, the problem says 1 or 2. Okay, yeah. So this is a solution for this problem. Let us see another example. let us say we have 161 employees classified according to this table. So this table says there are workers, there are employees under 30 years and above 30 years. We call them under 30 years like with U and above 30 years with A. And there are male and female. So we organize all the data in this table. So how many males we have? There are 82 males with 30 of the with 54 of them being under 30 and 28 of them are above 30. And there are 79 females. In that 47 are younger than 30 years and 32 are older than 30 years. So it's the total number of employees less than 30, 101, and above 30 years is 60. So the total number of employees are 161. So what's the question? The question says you select a random person, random female person, random female employee, and what is the probability that she is under 30? So you said you select in this you select one of the employees which is already female. So you know you are selecting a female. Now my question is, what is the probability that she is under 30? So you randomly selected one female employee and I want to know what is her age, what is the probability that she is under 30. So let us say the question is probability U is under 30. What is the probability that U under 30 when given that she's that employee is a female? So when I put F here, this F represents which is already given. So we call it a conditional probability. The conditional probability, this is the formula. Probability of U intersection F divided by probability of F. So what is U intersection F? U intersection F is, it should be available in U and also F. So if you see the table, U and also F, so which is 47. So 47 members or 47 employees are female and also under 30 divided by total number of female. How many are the total female? Here we know which is 79. So we want to know the probability. We know the probability is this number divided by the total number of employees, which is 161. But here if you see, it reduces to 47 divided by 79, which is 0.5949. So you can say 59.49% of the, or the probability of getting a female is 59.49%, who is under 30. Okay. Or let me tell in another words, if you select a random female, the probability that she is under 30 is 59.49%, right? Okay. Now let us see what is independent event. Before we go to this independent event, are you all having everything clear until this slide? If you have any doubts, please ask me. Okay, I have 2 more slides before going to another theorem. So if you have any doubts, please organize your thoughts and you can have a discussion, and then we go to the next part. Okay. So let us see the independent events. What is the independent event? The independent events are the events whose, let us say if you are having 2 events, the event A and event B. So the event B does not depend on the outcome of the event A. So what does it mean? So you are doing 2 works. For example, you are flipping 2 coins. So you flipped a coin, it came head. So you are flipping another coin. You say the next event, the next falling of heads. So you say your event selected is heads in the second one. and the event A is heads in the first one. So first one, you flipped first coin and you got heads, and you flip the second coin, the outcome does not depend on the outcome of the previous one, and also the event, there is no relation, they are completely independent. So how do we say mathematically the probability of A when B is given is equals to probability of A? Means if B is given, if B happens or doesn't happen, it has no connection with the probability of A. So the probability of A is independent to the B. So if B is happening or not, the probability of A doesn't have anything to do. For example, cloudiness, I consider it is not independent to the rain. So when it is cloudy, the rain has the probability of having rain is more likely. So I think there are not two independent events. The two independent events can be something like when it is a cloudy day, am I getting a heads or tails? So those are completely independent. So we can say those are independent events. If it is cloudy or not, when you flip a coin, it doesn't affect the head or tails. So I call it the independent events. So what are the dependent events in this case? The rain and the cloud. So if it is cloudy, there is high likely or the probability changes for the rain, right? Okay. So now let's see the another law we call the law of multiplication, which is just reorganizing the conditional probability. We know the conditional probability is probability of A when B is given is equal to probability of A intersection B divided by probability of B. And then what we are doing is we are just trying to calculate what is probability of A intersection B. In other words, what is the probability of happening A and B at the same time, which is probability of happening A when B is given multiplied with probability of B, right? Okay. And if the events are independent, we already know probability of A when B is given is equals to probability of A. So we can write probability of A intersection B, which is equals to probability of A times probability of B, right? Okay, here I want to spend 2 minutes and see if you have any doubts. Please tell me, please ask me if you have any doubts. We are going to the next topic, which is very interesting, and we spend little time there. So if you have any doubts, please ask me, students. No, I see there are no doubts. So let me go to the next slide, next part. Next is Bayes theorem. Bayes theorem is one of the most important theorem. This is the most conflicting, or we can say the results which we obtain here are sometimes contradicting to our beliefs. So we start believing something else and the results is something different, but we should always appreciate that the mathematics is more correct and we have to spend more time to understand, right? So what does it say? Probability of A when given is equals to probability of A times probability of B when A is given divided by probability of B. Okay, if you pay more attention here, what we are doing is probability of A when B is given. That's we are going to calculate when we already know what is the probability of A. So here you should understand probability of A is different from probability of A when B is given, and then probability of B when A is given, and probability of B. Okay, so we apply this formula, but when we apply in the real life, calculating probability of B is kind of little not so direct. We have to use some other techniques. So let us solve one example where we understand how to calculate the probability of P, or a probability in general, right? So let's see how we can calculate in a real life example. So let us see, we are performing an experiment with doing two things. First, we are flipping a dakchi, and then we are tossing a coin. You know, the dakchi became famous from the Squid Games. It has two sides. One side is like this, with showing 4 triangles, another side with completely plain. So if you flip, there is a, let us say it is 50-50 chances of falling the plain side or the triangle side. And then we have probability 50% of chance when you flip a coin. So it can be head or tails. So this is the tree diagram I'm preparing. So let's see what's the question. Calculate the probability of falling heads in the game where first we flip a dakchi and then we toss a coin. So first we are flipping a dakchi and then we are flipping a coin. And my question is, what is the probability that we get heads? So if you see, we are getting heads in two different places. One is here, another is here. So what is the probability? We have to see probability of falling this one, and we have to add with the probability of falling this one, right? Okay. So let us see the solution, how it is. So I gave here the names, like for example, probability of dakchi upside, and we say complement to the upside. So I'm representing U as the upside, right? So probability of upside is 0.5. Probability of not going upside is 0.5 again. And now we see this part, the first heads, it says probability of heads when it is falling upside. So what we are saying, or this branch represents, is probability of falling heads when we already know that dakchi is upside, so which is 50%. So another here, this branch, the second branch where it is tails, which is 2, which represents is probability of not falling heads when it is given that the dakchi is upside, which is again 0.5. We already know all this information. What I'm doing is I'm trying to put in mathematical terms to understand it. Okay, the third one, the third coin which we are seeing here, it says the probability of falling heads when the dakchi is not upside. So how we are representing probability of heads when dakchi is not upside, which is 0.5. And we see probability of not heads when dakchi is not upside, which we are representing with 0.5 again. So if we want to know probability of this coin, this coin, this coin, we already know we have to multiply this times this. 0.5 times 0.5 gives 0.25. We already did this example, but let us do mathematically. It says probability of U times probability of H when U is given, or conditional probability of P HU. So we have this one, right? So what does this give? This give 0.25, and we know what is this? Multiplication of this branch, the starting to dakchi one, the first one, and then first coin, the branch. So multiplication of this gives us let me see if I can draw here. Okay, this branch multiplied with this branch. Yeah, I can write. Okay, this, when I start from here and I move like this, I multiply all the probability in this path. So I'm multiplying probability of U times probability of H when U is given. And the multiplication is probability of U times probability of H when U is Q. So we know, or we want to know, the probability of falling heads. So how do we calculate it? Is we see the probability of heads here, and then we see probability of heads in this other case. And then we add both of them because it's the total. So probability of, here it says, this one shows the first one here, and this one probability of not falling upside multiplied with probability of heads when it is given that it is not upside. So it is this one. So this is under the sum of these two will give probability of H. So this is very important because next time in the real life experiments we get data not like concentrated, we get discrete data we have to collect from different places. So you should know what data you are interested. So that's why I say tree diagram is most interesting and most informative for me. I feel more comfortable with the tree diagram. So once you have tree diagrams, you have exclusive sets, and then you can select and you can add them and you can get more information. So in this way I get 0. In this we already did, so we know 0.25 plus 0.25 is 0.5. So what is the probability of falling heads? We know these are independent events, so we already know the Dakchi doesn't have anything to do with this, so we already get 0.5. So anyway, so understand from this example that 0.5 is the probability of falling heads. Okay, does anyone have any doubts until here? No doubts? Okay. Now let's go to the next example. This is the last example we are going to do for this today. And let us see this example clearly and understand what we can do. Okay. Let's say John visited New York City. The New York City is having a population around 8.5 million people. He went to celebrate the New Year in the year of 2020. So we already know in 2020 we had a unfortunate event of coronavirus breakdown. So we had a coronavirus breakdown and 85 people are infected in New York City. This example I'm just making it up. It's not based on the real facts. So let us say there are 85 people already infected, and the John is worried that he may be infected. So he went for a PCR test and he received a positive test. I mean, the test result was positive. The question is, what is the probability that John is infected with coronavirus? So if we say PCR gives correct positive for 98% of the times, and PCR gives false positive 1% of the times. So what is correct positive and false positive? So if you do any test in medical tests, so 98% is the accuracy, means if you have let us say if one person is having a coronavirus, if you do 100 tests, 98% of the times it's going to say that he's having coronavirus, and 2% of the time it says it doesn't have coronavirus. So we call it the correct positive. And what is the false positive means? So let us say we have 100 people who doesn't have coronavirus and you perform tests, and then what happens is for 99% of the people it says it doesn't have coronavirus, but for 1% it says yes, you have coronavirus. So we call it the false positive. So this information I'm just making it up. So if you see here, it is very accurate, which is 98%, and PCR gives a false positive of 1%. Okay. So let me read the problem again. John visited New York City. John visited the New York City, and New York City is having a population of 8.5 million people. And when he was there for the New Year, and the authorities identified and confirmed that there are 85 people infected. So there are 85 confirmed cases. And now John is worried and he went for a PCR test. And what type of test is PCR? PCR gives 98% correct result. For example, if 100 people go to test, 100 people who are, we already know that they are infected, and we do the test. For 98 people, it says the test is positive. They have coronavirus. For 2 people, it can't detect. So we say 98%, right? And then PCR give false positive as well. What is false positive? So if you go 100 people without coronavirus and you test, for that 1% of the people, it says for one, it shows there is coronavirus, while he is not really infected. But that's we call the false positive. So the question is, what is the probability that John is infected with the coronavirus? So what is the probability that he is infected with coronavirus? So let us see. Let me conduct a poll and see what is the answer you are expecting. So let me see, what do you think is the probability? Answer can be less than 10%. I'm using the percentage, but in probability, it is 0. We have to write, if it is 10%, it means 0.1. If it is 50%, means it is 0.5. We divide by 100, right? I have a poll, please answer it. So what do you think is the probability that John is infected with coronavirus? What do you think? It doesn't have to be correct. I just want to know what is your thinking about it. So if you already know, if you have solved it, you can tell the correct answer. If you didn't solve, you can just use your feelings and you can tell me. It doesn't have to be correct. You can just tell me what you feel. So we see 2 responses. So let's wait for another 6 more responses. So the question is, what is the probability that John is really infected with the coronavirus? Okay, still 3 more responses. Okay, so let us see. Let me stop the answer polling. Let us see, a lot of us think it's more than 90 or more than 98%. So let us see the analysis. What do we think is the PCR is very correct. It gives 98% of the time it's correct. And false positive is very less. So it's very good test. It sounds very good. But if we apply the Bayes theorem, let us see what happens. So what we are neglecting or what we are not taking into account is the population of the New York City. It is a very huge population and very less people are infected. Only 85% are infected. So let us see what happens. First, let's draw a tree diagram. A is the event, the John is infected with virus. So there are only two possibilities. John is infected with coronavirus or he is not infected with coronavirus. And then there is another event B. John is tested positive in a test. So when John is infected, so when the John is infected, and when John is infected, we are going through this branch. Then we have two options, or we have two possibilities. One is he's tested positive or he's tested negative. And let's go to the another branch. The another branch says John is not infected. When John is not infected, still there are two chances. He can be tested positive and he can be tested negative. Right? Okay. Now let us see what is the probability that he is tested positive. So what is the probability that he is tested positive? This is the addition of these two, right? So what is the probability of John tested positive is probability of B, which is sum of this one plus sum of this one. We add these two, right? Okay, now let's go to the solution. So we can say probability of A. So what is probability of A? Probability that John is positive, or we say John is having coronavirus. So how do we know if John is having coronavirus or not? That's the first question. We don't know. So that's what we want to see. What's the probability? So what we say, the probability of he getting coronavirus is very, very less, because there are 85 people who are infected in the whole city, and the city is with 8.5 million people. So what is his probability of he getting infected in a city is 85 divided by 8.5 million, which is 10 to the power of minus 5. So you see the probability is very, very less, very, very unlikely. But here we know another thing, he's tested positive. So let us see what happens. But when he went for a test, he got positive. So that information has some weight, right? So let us see how it is included into that. So probability that B is tested positive when he's having coronavirus is given that 0.98. So how do we get this? P times probability of A multiplied with probability of B when A is given is 9.8 times 10 to the power of minus 6. So we are trying to calculate the numerator here. Probability of A times probability of B when A is given. So if you see the tree diagram, what we are doing in this part is the first branch. Let me go to the tree diagram again. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to calculating this part, right? So I calculated this part, and the answer is 9.8 times 10 to the power of minus 6. It's very less number. It's a very tiny number. Okay, but let us go with another part. So the denominator is probability of B. So if you see what is probability of B, we can say probability of A times probability of B when A is given plus probability of A complement multiplied with probability of B when A complement is given. So here this term and the numerator is the same. So if you see that, you get the same. So we already calculated this value. So what we need to calculate is this part. So what does this give? Probability of B, probability of being positive when you don't have coronavirus is called false positive, right? And we say there is 1% of chance. So there are 1% of people, or we can say 0.01 is the probability that you will be detected positive even if you don't have coronavirus. So what is this whole term goes? Probability of A complement times probability of B when A complement is given. So we know A, probability of A, which is a tiny number, which is 10 to the power of minus 5. So probability of A complement, we know the sum of these two should be equals to 1. So probability of A complement is 1 minus 10 to the power of minus 5, which is this number. So what we have is, we have this multiplied with 0.01, which is this number. So which gives 9.9999 times 10 to the power of minus 3. Okay. When you are dealing with very small numbers, I recommend you not to do rounding. For example, if I say 9.999, it makes me it kind of asks me to why to write so many nines. Why can't I just write 10 times 10 to the power of minus 3? That is correct. That's not wrong. You can do that. But I recommend you not to do that, because when all numbers are very small, this small rounding, the numbers may give a big effect into the results. So I recommend you not to do rounding when it is very tiny numbers. Anyway, you are not going to use your hands to multiply. You are going to use some calculators. So you try to store the variables, store the numbers in some variables and try to use them. If it is Excel sheet, you can keep one cell with each number so that you can do manipulating with the numbers. Don't just type the numbers, try to manipulate the variables. Okay. So this is the probability of B when probability of B when A complement is given times probability of A complement. So we have these two terms. So we can calculate the numerator divided by these two. Right? Okay. So if you see here, I wrote this one and this one is the same. Just I don't know why I changed here I wrote 10 to the power of minus 5. Here I wrote 10 to the power of minus 6. That's why here it is 0.98 and it is 9.8. But we know these two are the same, right? So these two are the same. And what we are doing is this divided by this plus another term, which is this 9.9999 times 10 to the power of minus 3. So if we do compute all this, we get 9.79 times 10 to the power of minus 4, which is a very, very tiny number. How much it is? Which is 0.000009. This is a probability. Or in percentages, how much we can say? This is a percentage of, we multiply with 100 for the percentage, right? 0.0979%. So what is the probability that he is really having coronavirus? Is 0.09%. So it's a very, very, very little chance that he's having coronavirus. So we all thought he's having 90% chance of being infected with coronavirus, but actually no, he's having very, very little chance that he's infected with coronavirus. Okay. So this is the result which I was thinking that is kind of little contradicting to our beliefs, but this is correct because we are trying to ignore the fact that the New York population is very high. Okay, now let us see the question again. The question is not complete. We have another small interesting fact or interesting detail. Let me go to this question. It says, John is not convinced with the test and took test from another diagnostics center and he found positive again. He's positive again. What is the probability now with the latest information? So we have some information and now we have we received that he's having very less probability, but he's worried that he got positive, right? So what we did is he went to another clinic or another diagnostic center and he tested himself and now he got positive. So now again it's like it's a second test and the result is positive. So the question is, so what is the probability now that he's having coronavirus? So probability now after the second positive. So now let me ask. So I'll ask another question to you on the device. Please tell me. Okay. So after the second test, so what do you think is the probability now? I use the probability that he's corona positive. Is my question clear to you? I received one answer. So after the first result, we felt that, or we got the information that he's having only a chance of 0.0979%. So after the second test, he's found positive again. So now question is, what do you think? What is the probability now? Okay, only 2 people answered, and one answer is between. Now we have 3 answers. The answer says 10 to 50, 50 to 80, 80 to 90. Okay, so more people are opting around 50, 10 to 50 and 50 to 80. Okay. Now let me show what I did. Let me go here. Okay, what I did, I made a chart. For the first test, the PA is, we are taking this number, the probability of being infected with coronavirus. I'm taking this number from the city's probability, because there are 85 people infected among the 8.5 million people. So this is a probability that he is infected. Okay, now for the second one, the PA I'm taking from the previous result. So this one is equals to this result, because we already know, because he's tested positive, right? So once he's tested positive, so his probability increased. Before it was this, but now it increased because he got a positive result. So you have positive result. So now at the end, he's having, now if you see, he's having a little more chance of getting infected. So what is this? It is around, this is a probability in terms of percentage, it is 8.76%. This is the probability that he's infected, right? So from the chances from 0. What is the here? It is as 0.0979%. The probability has changed to 8.6%. Now it's more probable that he is infected with coronavirus. So now if we say he went for a test again, now he's tested again, now he received again positive. So if I do the same analysis again, here the probability that he's already infected is this one. So I taken from this value from the previous answer. So what I'm doing is I'm updating new information into the already available knowledge. So this is the knowledge we have. He's 8% chances that he's infected. So now we have new result. The new result says he's positive, and compiling all the results, now he says we are certain that he is 90% infected, you see. So it's more chances. Every time is this chance of getting infected is increasing. So the probability is 90.3 now after the third test. So in this way, you can try to create a table. Here I'm doing only for the positive tests. If you get a number of positive tests, so how certain is getting. So after 4 or 5 or something, he'll get 0.99. So it's like very, very close. You will never get equals to 1 because there is always little bit chance, but we'll get very, very close to 1. All right. Okay. So does anyone has any doubts in this? Okay. So as an exercise, can you tell me what happens when it is 4? What is going to happen? What's the result we can expect? I mean, for the 4th time, if he is tested positive, what do you think will be the answer? I know it is a lot of numbers. It will take some time. So we have around 10 minutes time. No, we have only 5 minutes, right? Okay. You think you can calculate in 5 minutes, or you think it's very difficult for us to do in 5 minutes, the calculation? Okay. So let me do it because I have this Excel sheet, so I can do it easily, a little quicker, and I can share the results with you. When it is the 4th time, let me clean it and I'll show. When it is 4th time, the probability of A is same as the result of the previous one. It is 0.903957. Probability of not having coronavirus is 1 minus this one, right, which is reducing 0.096. What is probability of tested positive when you have coronavirus, which is always constant in this case, which is this one? What is a false positive, which is also one constant value? And this one, this multiplication gives us, I already have here, so let me copy paste the value, 0.88, 0.8859, and this one I received as very small number, 0.00096. See this number, as it gets smaller and smaller, we get very close to the 1. Probability of B is 0.8868. Probability, finally, what we are getting is around 0.9989. So after 4 tests, if we get positive again, like continuously for 4 times, then we can say that he is having 99.8% chances that he is infected with coronavirus. So we can be still hopeful even after 2 or 3 tests. I'm saying depending on the city population and the number of infected cases, right? Okay. So that is all I wanted to explain today. If you have any doubts, you can still ask me regarding any of the topics we have seen until now. Okay, so no doubts. In the previous class, I was explaining about the cofactors. In that, I did a mistake, which I didn't see that, which is I didn't multiply with the frequency. That's why it is showing very less value. I uploaded those slides, and now you have updated version in the Blackboard. Now you can go there and see the slides. The updated version shows that when you calculate covariance, you have to multiply with frequency when it is grouped data. The formula which I was showing was for ungrouped data, and I applied for grouped data. That's why there was a small conflict. So I was looking into it and I verified it, and I got the correct answer now. Yeah. So that is all for today. If you have any doubts, you can ask me, or else we can conclude for today. Thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions, students?
Professor, I have some questions. Maybe could you please give me a couple of minutes after the class is over?
Sure.
Because I was checking the homework and I'm really confused on many of the questions.
Okay. Sure, we can, if you want, you can ask now. We can see it.
Okay, so you have the homework in hand, I'm guessing?
Yeah, let me open it. Here. So which assignment are you talking about?
Sorry?
Which one are you talking about, the assignment 2?
No, about the statistics for the set theory, the 1.3, I think. The one is due on this Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah.
I would gladly pass through all of the questions because I am having so many questions. I've read, but still I have so many questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So for question number 1, it says analyze the following statements and explain if these assigned probabilities are possible. I'm understanding as we're only we can only get 1 as the total sum. The only possible probability is the one give us 1 because the rest is not possible. Is it okay? Or I don't know. I got confused because it says mutually exclusive. So I'm not sure.
Okay, a trial has 5 possible outcomes: A, B, C, and D, and sorry, let me read again. A trial has 5 possible outcomes: A, B, C, D, or E, which mutually exclusive. Analyze the following statements and explain if the assigned probabilities are possible. Yeah. So,
yes.
So you're saying the sum should be equals to 1. That's right. What you're saying is correct.
Okay, so because I saw another, I kept reading because I'm actually not familiar with probability. So I kept reading and I saw some examples where the sum was, it says 2 options and it said one is 0.6 and one is 0.5. So the sum is 1.1 and I think that is not possible.
That's not possible. Yeah.
Okay, so this is it. So I'm okay. It has to be always 1.
Yeah, when the events are exclusive. When events are not exclusive, it is possible.
Oh,
for
okay.
Example, yeah, for example, I say like probability of getting even numbers and probability of getting odd numbers. If you add those two, they are mutually exclusive, right? So you will get sum should be 1. But if I say probability of getting 1, probability of getting evens, probability of getting odds, probability of getting 2, probability of getting 3, if you add all these things, they are not mutually exclusive. So I can get more than 1.
Okay, so when mutually exclusive, I have always to get the sum of all probabilities have to be 1.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and the second, I'm sorry, I will go through every question. Is that okay? I'm sorry.
At 10 o'clock, I have another class with another
maybe we can schedule something like for sharing my thoughts.
Okay, sure. Maybe at 10 o'clock we can at 10 o'clock when I finish class with the other group, we can meet together and you can talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I will write to you and you let me know when you're available. I am really interested in understanding this.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe like after, as soon as I finish class with other group at 10 o'clock, you can come to the Blackboard here, and also others, if they're interested to know, they can come and join the same video group. We can join and we can discuss about it.
Perfect, thank you. But it's already 10 o'clock. What time your
sorry,
class?
sorry, 10 o'clock. No, 12 o'clock. I mean.
12 o'clock. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. See you then. Bye bye.
You're welcome. See you. Bye. Okay, I will disconnect now. See you in the next class, or we can meet at 12 o'clock. See you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Same to you.